what are we doing to even put this thing down? Do I duct tape it down? Do I staple it down? Does it just sit there? What's going on here? So in this picture, we're showing you 1, 2, 3. And this is probably the most fun to say, but thinset, NUHEAT, thinset, tile. That's all there is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of stay on this slide, but I'm going to show you a little bit of what we got going on here. Okay, so on this, we have that little guy, that F1006, which is right here. This is a job site display that I'm showing you that we have a dedicated outlet with conduit running down to the floor, and this here is a standard NUHEAT mat, which is that F1006 to 2 foot by 3 foot. On this mat, there is a lead wire, and this lead wire is going to be 10 foot long. Key point, 10 foot long, and it's going to have a production tag at the end of that. Now, as you can see, this is a terrible orientation. I did a terrible job. I should really have this power cord closest to the thermostat location or power location. That's going to be the best spot to put that. So in this situation, I've done a bad job. But one little note, the NUHEAT standard mats do not have a top or bottom. A custom mat would, only for orientation. But when it comes to this mat, the best way to orientate this would be to pick this mat up, flip it around, and install it this way. Now, what I'm looking at is I have my power line right at where I'm going to have my conduit, and I'm going to be able to feed that right up into the thermostat location. Okay? So when it comes to installing the mat, obviously this little guy is really easy to understand and comprehend. It's just going to fit perfectly. But if you had a lot of standard mats or a couple custom mats that you had to put together, your friend is Mr. Sharpie. What you're going to do is you're going to dry fit the mat out of the box first, and you're just going to note the corners. This is a little detail, but it's very important. So you're going to note the corners. When you pull this mat back, I now know where this mat needs to get put in the wet thin set. So at this point, I'm going to scrape out wet thin set modified with a 1/4 by 1/4 square notch trowel. Then I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to push this mat into that wet thin set. Then I'm going to take that same trowel, which is a 1/4 by 1/4 minimum. Now, if your tile is thicker and it requires a 1/2 by 1/2, then please use the correct trowel on top of the system. Once again, the minimum trowel size is a 1/4 by 1/4 below to stick it down. We're going to push that mat into that, and then you're going to use a minimum trowel size of a 1/4 by 1/4 square notch trowel. You're going to scrape that thin set out, and you're going to set tile. This can all be done in one clean motion. So if you have our #1 seller in a standard mat is a 5 foot by 3 foot, you can kind of see why thin set, NUHEAT, thin set, tile. Very straightforward, very easy to install. All of my wires are machine spaced, giving that even heat distribution. This fabric that's 1/8 of an inch thick is there to help with the bond. It is a wicking fabric so that when it's pushed down into that wet thin set, it's going to allow that thin set to wick through so that when the thin set of the tile comes down on top of it, it oozes together and makes a really strong bond. One key point, though, is it does not ooze through the point that you can't work on the top of the NUHEAT mat. Whereas we'll get into some other products that in our lineup that would potentially have that issue. The NUHEAT pre-built mat does not. The thin set from below will be a dark gray as it starts to absorb into that thin set, but you can still kneel and walk on this system and thin set tile on top. Now, that's the book. And look, I'm aware that some people like to do it different ways, and I am totally accepting of that. So look, thin set, you put the NUHEAT mat down, and then some contractors may want to skim coat the top of this mat. Totally fine. And in fact, that is the way that we would do laminate and engineered wood floors. We'd want to thin set this mat down, then we'd want to scrape thin set over top of this, let that dry, then go ahead and do your padding and float your laminate floor. Okay? That is a NUHEAT mat. And that is basically how easy it is to install the quickest and fastest pre-built electric floor heating system from nVent NUHEAT.